Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome. We'll be getting started in just 1 minute. We'll wait as everyone is getting signed on here. Thank you to all that have joined us today. So just so you all are aware, this meeting will be, it is being recorded, and no names or information for participants or anything will be shown. We will do our best to share the video afterwards to attendees and also post it on YouTube for anyone who might be interested to watch afterwards. And we're also going to be broadcasting on Facebook as well. So if you'd like to follow us on our page, Afghan-American Community Organization, AACO, you can watch there as well. But again, just wanna thank you all for joining us. We know that there is just a lot happening right now within our communities, a lot that is changing constantly and consistently. And we're hosting this webinar to hopefully uh, shed a little bit of light on what's happening and update you all on the latest information from leading experts in the field. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Omar Aziz. I'm the Executive Director for the Afghan-American Community Organization, otherwise known as AACO. And I'm honored to be joined by Spojmie Nasiri and Bismah Jaffar. Spojmie Jan is on the board of directors for AACO, is an immigration attorney, and also on the board of directors for CAIR National. And Bismah Jaffar is a civil rights attorney with CAIR-SF Bay Area. So two leading experts in the field and folks that we can, I think, really know that we have some really great information and reliable sources for what's happening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, so hopefully you all can see this. I want to introduce those of you, I'm sure many of you are familiar with CAIR, the Council for American Islamic Relations, and know the work that they do, the incredible work that they do as kind of the leading civil rights organization for the Muslim community in the United States, always on the front for defending our community, defending our rights. Some of you may not be familiar with AACO, with the Afghan-American Community Organization, so I wanted to take a minute to share a little bit about us. So we are we're a national organization, and our mission is to advance the Afghan American community through education and outreach and promote civic and social engagement. We kind of have four main focus areas around academic and professional development. We provide scholarships for the Afghan American community. We host the Afghan American Conference. We support healthcare and rights in Afghanistan. And then most recently, especially after 2021, following the withdrawal of the United States from Afghanistan, we've been doing more work around legal education and outreach, and so we've working on access and advocacy for not just our community, but other immigrant communities and Muslim communities around the country. So that's a little bit about our work. I got a chance to introduce our important and distinguished guests for today, and I will go ahead and begin by passing it on to our guests here to share a little bit more about what the context of the situation is. But before they begin, one more thing I want to add. Just we know that the need is really great. There's more unknown than known right now, and so we're going to do our best to provide as much up-to-date information as we can. We don't have all the answers, and we're not here to help necessarily individual cases, but do our best to provide general information for folks. And we'll take some time at the end of the session. This will be 1 hour. And so the first 40 minutes or so will be the presentation. And then the last 15 minutes, we'll have time for the Q&A. So please go ahead and enter your questions using the Q&A feature. You can also message us, and the messages just go directly to the host and panelists. It's not seen by the rest of the group. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it on to you all.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. We've been doing these presentations quite often the last few weeks because the need is great and the questions are, people are very much concerned about the issues regarding rights of U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, and non-immigrant visa holders. There's a lot of misinformation on social media. Myself, along with my co-panelist Bismah, probably getting hundreds of questions. So as Omar stated, we are here today to give a general overview. And we've already accumulated a lot of the questions that many of you have had. We'll be addressing them and then kind of go from there. So I'll hand it over to my co-panelist, Bismah.
Everyone. Before we start, do want to start with a legal disclaimer that the material covered in this presentation is intended only to educate and does not constitute legal advice. Everyone watching should not act on the information provided without seeking any professional legal counsel. Neither transmission nor receipt of these materials creates an attorney-client relationship between the author and the receiver. Thank you.
So in today's agenda, we wanted to kind of go over what's happening at the borders when people are coming in. What are your rights at the airports and at the borders? And then also protecting your digital privacy and devices. In addition, we'll be talking about immigration applications and deportation process. Many people have messaged me and all of us asking, well, what happens if I am in deportation? Am I going to just get deported right out of the US? Whether I'm detained by ICE within the United States, or if I'm detained at the border, what are my rights and what are the processes? And also, Bismah will talk about what we do if an FBI or ICE agent approaches you. In the past, many of us in this space were primarily worried about FBI visits, whether at the home or at the work or calls. Now the dynamics have quite changed, where we likely, for some demographics more than others, will be seeing even ICE visiting individuals in different spaces. So we will give a general overview on those topics. So I'll hand it over to Bismah to get us started.
So I'll be covering your basic rights at the airport, but what we're seeing at the border is practices that have always been in place, but now they're harsher border enforcement practices. Minor visa issues can now lead to detention or deportation. There are aggressive customs and border patrol tactics, such as shackling, harsh questioning, and limited oversight. And these detention centers are used even for tourists with small violations. Travelers are forced to buy expensive open-ended tickets to leave, and social media and device searches have intensified. There's few rights for US citizens, but they are the most protected, so even fewer rights for non-citizens and visa holders. Customs Border Patrol officials are very openly proud of strict enforcement under the past executive orders. So if we go to the next slide, I can talk in general about your rights at the airports and the border. So Customs and Border Patrol officers may stop, detain, and search any person or item at the border. However, they can't select you for a personal search or a secondary inspection based solely on your race or religion, national origin, ethnicity, or political beliefs. And if they wanted to conduct invasive strip searches, those can only be done if they have reasonable suspicion that you are involved in a criminal activity. These are the rules, but in practice, officers won't admit that they're selecting you based on your race or your religion. And if you were to ask what the reasonable suspicion was, if they were trying to do a strip search, they could easily say something vague like you're fitting a description of someone that we want to look out for. So you want to remain calm if this were to happen to you. You don't want to get in an argument. Anything that you say could be used against you, and lying is a criminal offense. It's still good to know what your rights are so that afterwards you're able to file a complaint if necessary. And again, this is worst case scenario, But if you are being brought in for a secondary inspection and you're traveling with someone, let them know to be aware of what time it is. If you're not traveling with anyone, call or text a family or a friend and let them know. And if they don't hear from you again in 4 hours, that's when they should seek legal help on your behalf. And what you should do is get the names and the badge numbers of those questioning you. There is no right to an attorney during these inspections, but it doesn't hurt to have an attorney's number on you or a legal organization. You may ask to contact them during this questioning if you feel like you're being asked intrusive questions or you're being held for more than 4 hours. At the next slide, I'll discuss rights for US citizens at the airport and the border. So US citizens, again, are the most protected. They have the broader protections for things that they can refuse to provide and then still be allowed back in the country. So US citizens won't be denied entry if they refuse to give passwords, they refuse to give access to their device, or if they refuse to give their electronic devices for a search, and they can refuse to answer questions that are unrelated to establishing their identity or their citizenship. So what citizens only need to do is present a valid passport, and if you are being asked extra questions, you can deny answering them. This can lead to delays. This can lead to them just, holding you to the side and trying to figure out what their next steps are. And in general, whether you're a citizen or not, every individual will have to make their own decisions when asserting their rights and understanding their risk tolerance. So if you want to assert your rights as a citizen and deny answering these questions, there is a chance you could be delayed and miss your flight. That is your risk to decide to take. And then at the next slide, I'll discuss the lawful permanent residents and what rights they have at the airport. So a lawful permanent resident who has been previously admitted to the US and have maintained their status cannot be denied entry for refusing to provide access to a device. You would only have to answer questions establishing your identity and your permanent residency. And only an immigration judge can revoke your status. You may be asked to sign something that might relinquish your green card or something like that. Don't sign anything, especially don't sign anything you don't understand. And refusal to answer questions or give access to a device may lead to delay, lengthy questionings, or seizure of that device. And again, every individual will need to make their own risk assessment. If we move on to the next slide. If you are a non-citizen visa holder, your rights are very limited. You refuse to cooperate. This may lead to the officers denying entry back into the country. And for everyone, if an officer searches or confiscates your device, you want to write down their name and get receipt for your property. And while Border Patrol agents may ask questions that seem irrelevant, there might be a good faith basis in them asking those questions and trying to establish your identity. If you don't feel comfortable with their line of questioning, you can ask to speak to their supervisor. And after you leave, once you're out of the airport, you do have the option to file a complaint with the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. I do suggest speaking to an attorney before you file such a complaint. And I do acknowledge that this is easier said than done, but US citizens have the most protections in the US. So if you're interested in the path to citizenship, now is a good time to speak to an attorney to see what your options are. I will pass it back to Spojmie.
Okay, so thank you so much, Bismah. So as Bismah was mentioning, CBP has the authority to inspect devices at the border or crossings, including phones, laptops, and tablets. And that's always been the case. I'm sure many of you have had experience where you got home and in your luggage, you found a piece of paper that said, DHS has, looked through your bags. They're doing so more now than before. Some people say, well, I'm a US citizen, I have constitutional right. Well, keep in mind that US constitutional protections begin only once you are physically inside the United States. So you're seeking admission, you're not technically in the US. Border inspections are not considered invasions of privacy, and inspections of data extractions are becoming more and more common. So again, as Bismah said, you're not required to give your password. I think in the next slide, I'm going to talk about how to protect yourself, but CBP may use software to extract data from your devices if they're able to access it. I think, yeah. So, so in terms of like digital privacy for visa holders, that includes non-citizens such as F1, H1B, tourists that are coming in. For those, as it was mentioned already, the rights are a little bit less, meaning they can be more evasive in terms of asking questions and searching. So subject to immigration laws and CBP and border protection screening, again, they have broader powers at the entry, and they can question, search, and deny entry to visa holders. And again, it includes inspection of luggages, documents, and electronic devices. Know your visa type and know the limitations that you have. So, for example, one example of a colleague was that they were coming in on a visitor visa, and the officer was asking extensive questions, and they found out that that person potentially was working unlawfully in the United States as a visitor visa. The visa was revoked. They can look at your text messages, they can look at all of your information, so you want to be very careful on what you have on these devices. And then also keep your documents to enter the US accessible and organized. And again, if you are denied entry, ask for a written reason. Most likely, they're probably not going to give you a written notice. What I would say, as I was mentioned earlier, is now we all don't have access to an attorney. Many of us probably can't afford an attorney in some ways or other. But if you have any type of issue or something and you're traveling abroad, at least have a consultation with an attorney and have the number of that attorney. And prior to your travel, you should be giving a copy of your either green card or home passport or US passport. Those information, your identity information, maybe your flight information. If you're traveling with someone, I mean, if you're traveling alone and you're coming in and I'm supposed to pick you up, for example, and I don't hear from you for an hour or two, then I should have information for possibly an attorney to reach out to. So again, not all of us have the leisure of having an attorney on standby, but at least consult with someone. If you have any concerns or you've had any kind of run-in with the laws, I'll touch on that a little bit more as we're going through. So for digital privacy, again, lawful permanent residents may face detailed questioning upon entry, and CBP may even coerce you into signing some sort of documents. One of the, as it was mentioned earlier about Bismah, like do not sign anything under any circumstances, especially if you don't understand it. Now, there's a form called I-407. It's voluntary abandonment of your green card. And the scenarios that I've seen this play out is, many of our elderlies in the community, they will stay here for a couple months and then they will leave for an extended amount of time back home, and they're coming back from their trip. Well, as a green card holder, you are not allowed to stay more than 6 months. And then if you do, they start questioning. But if you stay out of the US more than a year and you're coming back in, then you've potentially abandoned your green card status. And so in those scenarios, they may coerce you to say, well, if you stayed over 1 year, they're saying, well, you stayed over more than 1 year, you've abandoned your green card, sign this paper, go back. Under no circumstances should you sign that. So the procedurally what happens is as a US citizen, you can stay out as long as you want. There's no restrictions, but as a green card holder, 6 months, give or take. But if you stay out more than a year, then you've technically under the law abandoned. So say I am a green card holder and I traveled out and I stayed out 1 year and 5 days, whatever it may be. I'm coming in to seek entry. You're going to be put into secondary inspection. You're going to be asked about where you were, why you stayed out that long, and extensive questioning. So if you anticipate staying out more than 1 year, think about getting a travel document. But if I plan to go for 6 months, 7 months, and then I got really sick or something, family member got sick or something happened and I end up staying more than 1 year, then make sure you carry documentation to prove why you stayed out. Procedurally, if they tell me, well, I'm going to revoke your green card, they may say, well, you're going to stay detained, just sign the paperwork, don't make yourself a hassle. I've seen it dozens of times. I've been practicing immigration law for about 17 years. And I've seen it dozens and dozens of times. Or they'll say, if you don't sign this paper, the judge is going to come to the airport and deport you. Well, first of all, there's no such a thing. No judge is coming to the airport to do anything. So you don't want to sign any paperwork. Legally, under procedures of immigration law, they can take your green card. They will, if you're not subject to mandatory detention, meaning you don't have like a criminal record or some issue that makes you subject to mandatory detention, they have to let you into the United States. You will be put into removal deportation proceedings, and then eventually you have to go in front of an immigration judge to argue that you didn't abandon your green card. So my point is that don't sign the 407, because if you sign it, then you've given up your rights legally under the laws, and it's really hard for an attorney to litigate your case. And then again, like I said, don't stay out more than 6 months. Consult with an attorney before international travels. Also keep in mind, if you have any kind of a criminal record, whether it's theft, domestic violence, DUI, wet and reckless, any type of a law enforcement criminal record, when you're in the United States and you're a lawful permanent resident, when you leave the United States, you're seeking admission. So some of those criminal records, whether it's 5 days ago or 50 years ago, there's no statute of limitation. It'll make you inadmissible, meaning when you're coming back in and you may be subject to mandatory detention. So it has always been the case, but now more than ever, this administration is seeking to deport 1 million people or so by the end of the year. So they're looking for ways to get people and put them into removal. So again, point is, if you have any type of a run-in with the law, it's best to consult with an immigration attorney, at least have a consultation and say, is it risky? It's not. And then the end point is that if you are eligible for U.S. citizenship, now is the time to apply for citizenship, because the process is going to get harder and more stringent, and they've already implemented that they're going to be looking at the social media, which we'll talk about a bit later, but they will be doing all that when you're applying for citizenship. Next slide. So, Bismah, this is still my slide, right? Because you're doing 15. Okay. So what can we do in terms of protecting our digital privacy? Some of these tips are, common sense tips that we can all use. And some of them, use your judgment on what you feel comfortable with. Again, it's not legal advice to giving that disclaimer. But, we all have those facial recognition to open our iPhones or Androids really fast. So best recommendation would be to disable face recognition or biometrics access. Also set a strong password and use a two-factor authentication. So if you say, I'm not going to give you my password, and maybe they take your phone to the back, they may have some tools and mechanism to be able to access your phone. That's the best practice. Now, again, this is, people are saying, oh, you're too extreme, Spojmie. I mean, this is ridiculous. I have rights and stuff like that. Again, this is common sense advice. We know they're looking at people's phones. Use a travel phone instead of your main phone. We know even an immigration attorney who was detained for several hours, a U.S. citizen immigration attorney about 2 weeks ago, who was asked to open his phone, and he refused to open his phone. He was detained, and eventually he was let go. So this is not far-fetched scenarios of like, oh, it just happened. It's going to be a more common occurrence. So maybe, think about if you're doing a lot of traveling, you have a lot of stuff on your phone, and you don't really want that hassle. Now, they could say, as a U.S. citizen, they can say, well, for example, if I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm using a burner phone, and they go see on social media that I'm all over the place, whether it pertains to, the political issues or immigration activism or this administration, they could potentially ask me, well, why do you have a burner phone? That's a personal choice. I'm a U.S. citizen. I choose to travel light and simple. The end of conversation. How all that plays out, you're going to have to use your judgment, because we don't have answers to every single scenario. You may want to delete social media apps and sensitive data from your phone. So maybe if you have Instagram, Facebook, someone told me that they may potentially be able to see that you deleted the apps. I don't know how extensive they're going to be, but at least not having those apps easily accessible. Put your phone in airplane mode or lockdown. Again, sign out of important accounts and have backup files. You are not required to provide your password, whether you're a U.S. citizen or green card holder, or even a visitor, but within the realm of rights under those categories, you may be subject to more, questioning. And if you're a non-immigrant, a visa holder, they may potentially revoke your visa and return you. We know that there was a doctor, a Muslim doctor, who had an H-1B. She was coming back from a family trip from Lebanon. They asked her to open her phone. I guess she did. They saw some photos that they didn't like, and then her visa was revoked and she was returned back. So again, refusal may result in confiscation and detainment and cancellation of your visa. And again, U.S. citizens must only provide identity and travel documents. There was an article by AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, that Omar can send out later. It kind of goes into more details of these topics. So what are we seeing with immigration applications filed with USCIS? So everyone is now afraid to file applications because of some scenario. All across the country, whether it's the American Bar Association or the American Immigration Lawyers Association, nonprofit organizations, everyone is urging people that if you are eligible for U.S. citizenship, please consult with a licensed immigration attorney, not someone who does paperwork in our community that just fills out forms and stuff, an actual licensed immigration attorney, and see, what your options are filing. USCIS is going to do social media searches. They implemented that just this past week. A colleague of mine, client, was asked about certain things on his social media, and they were fine. They got the interview, but use your judgment for your personal preferences. We're not here to say, well, if you support, what's going on, that, if you're against the genocide and you're doing that, please don't have anything. It's a personal choice that you have to understand the risks and also understand the risks within the category of your immigration status. As spousal-based interviews, they are implementing in-person interviews. They're asking more questions. If someone has been deported before, or they have some sort of a criminal record, and they file for some sort of an application within the United States, there's a potential for ICE to pick you up at the interview in those scenarios where people have issues. So again, it's very, very crucial to speak with a licensed immigration attorney. If you don't know if someone is an attorney, ask them where they're licensed. Immigration, for example, is a federal, so somebody can be licensed in New York and still practice in California. So you just want to ask them for their license, make sure they're licensed. Absolutely under no circumstances, whether you're coming in at the border or you're filling out an application, do not leave out information. Do not falsify any information on your application. For example, the citizenship application asks, list membership of all your organizations. And you may be hesitant to put some. If you've been a member of certain organizations or you worked at places, if it's asking for a question, you need to provide that information, because omitting it and falsifying information will not only lead to denial, but charges of fraud and misrepresentation. So again, please be careful when working with an experienced immigration attorney to protect, your future and your rights under, immigration benefits. So again, what happens if I'm detained here within the United States? An individual is required to be served the notice to appear, which is a charging document and a date for you to show up in court. You'll have an opportunity to go what's called mastery calendar hearing, which are several hearings in front of a judge to litigate your case. And then you have an opportunity to apply for any type of relief, like asylum, cancellation of removal, or adjustment, or whatever relief that you're seeking. You will have an opportunity to go in front of a judge. So, and then if the judge denies your case, you have an opportunity to appeal it to a higher court. So if someone has been deported before, for example, somebody came in through the border or something, they've been deported already, but they didn't leave the United States, then so the judge ordered someone deported in court, in immigration court, and they never left because they let you go and you have to leave voluntarily on your own. if you've been ordered deported and you're still in the United States and you come into immigration custody again, ICE custody, you don't get to see a judge again. You're going to be expedited removed from the United States without a second hearing. So for those individuals who have had removal orders or deportation orders from a judge, and you are concerned, there may or may not be much to do, but it's best to consult with an immigration attorney.
Thank you,
So I'm going to
Spojmie.
go ahead and hand it over to my colleague Bismah to go through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you. So what I'm going to go over is what to do if ICE or the FBI is at your door. To be clear, these are different agencies with varying protocols, but for the most part, when they're at your residence, your rights remain the same. So what you shouldn't do is you should not open the door, you shouldn't answer any of their questions, and you shouldn't sign anything. So if they're knocking on your door, you can tell them through the door or maybe even open a window that you have the right to remain silent, that you have the right to privacy in your home, and that you have the right to speak to an attorney. You have to assert these rights. You can't just stay silent and assume the agents know you're invoking your right to remain silent. You have to say it. And the same goes with your right to an attorney. So if they're asking you questions, you can tell them that you have an attorney that will speak to them, ask them for their business card, and let them know your attorney will get back to them. You want to be clear and be brief when you're asserting your rights. For instance, there was once a man who was being investigated and he told detectives to just give me a lawyer dog, and that was in Louisiana. And the state Supreme Court held that he did not invoke his right to an attorney, and instead he was asking for a lawyer dog, which is not a thing. And so our legal system and our judges can often let their prejudices sway their judgments, which is why we need to be clear and brief when invoking these rights. So if you are in your home and ICE or FBI is there, remember you have the right to remain silent. They cannot enter your home without your consent or without a valid warrant signed by the judge. So if you do want to open the door and speak to them, then you can step outside and shut the door behind you so that they can't interpret any sort of consent to enter your home. And if either agent approaches you outside of your home, you want to ask if you are free to leave. If they say yes, then that's all that's needed and you can walk away. If they say no, you want to assert your rights. So the big difference here is that if the FBI is interested in arresting you or searching you outside of your home, they'll most likely need a warrant to do so. If ICE is interested in searching you or arresting you out in public, for the most part, they will not need a warrant, but your rights will still remain the same. So you can, again, invoke your right to remain silent and your right to an attorney. If we go to the next slide, here are some final tips. So again, we've been emphasizing to know your rights, but to exercise them with awareness. They are your rights to use, but again, every individual has their own risk tolerance. So you want to be aware of what your risk tolerance is. Keep critical documents and a legal contact ready. So you want to keep any valid sort of identifying documents on you, and the number of an attorney or a legal aid organization or a friend if you are being pulled for secondary inspection at the airport, things like that. You want to use caution on social media and when you do public demonstrations like protests, be careful of what you're wearing. If there's any identifying things on you, keep a mask on. And if you need legal guidance, you can always reach out to CAIR or AACO or Spojmie, and you want to stay informed because the laws and the policies are changing very quickly.
Thank you so much, Bismah. I just wanted to add a few more tips in terms of ICE visits. With the FBI visits, when they come to your home, it's very important, as was mentioned, do not open your doors. Many in our community have this misconception, and that's not just the Muslim community, I'm talking about the immigrant community, that if I open the door and talk to the FBI, then they're going to go away and I have nothing to hide. A very common scenario, please don't do that. You may have nothing to hide, but that could lead to something that's going to, I apologize, we're having an earthquake. Okay, it stopped. I'm in Pleasanton, California. Sorry, the whole room is shaking. So if you have FBI, so the best thing is to ask them again for their name, their badge number, and if they have any information they want to give you, and then go ahead and use that information to contact, someone. So for example, a couple of weeks ago in the Sacramento area, some community member who was, helping a lot of the newcomers, and he was approached by FBI and potentially asked to be an informant. And so it didn't affect him, but they were asking questions. He immediately contacted me, and I connected him with CAIR, and then the CAIR attorneys were available, called the FBI agent and said, my client will not be discussing anything with you further. Please contact me. My point is, that is not the approach to do. I have nothing to hide. I'm going to just go ahead and answer their question. Second of all, please do not invite them into your home. We have a tendency, particularly in the Afghan community, bring them in for chai, cookies, please come in. They can question anybody else in the home. They can, look around and things like that. So under absolutely no circumstances should you allow them in or talk to them without an attorney. Now let's flip over to ICE visits. ICE visits are very unpredictable. They may come in plain clothes. They may come in gear. They will more times than not tell you they have an arrest warrant when they don't have an arrest warrant. It's a judicial warrant. An arrest warrant is signed by a judge giving them probable cause to search or go into a home of a specific person on that name. The ICE agents usually don't have that information. So they will say, I have a warrant. Well, you say, please leave the warrant under my door. I will contact my attorney to contact you. Under no circumstances should you open the door for ICE agents. They do most of the time do not have a judicial warrant signed by a judge specifying the area of search and specifying the individuals they're looking for. If you want samples, we can certainly send over, if anybody wants, what a judicial warrant looks like and what an arrest warrant, what the detainer that they usually come in with ICE to show you. What also makes it very important is to not allow them into the home. If there are different individuals living with different status in the home, they can potentially put everybody at risk. So if you are in a workplace, your employer could possibly, vouch and say, you are not allowed to pass certain space because it's privacy space. If you're in a public setting and an ICE agent sees you, we know, we've seen the social media, we know what tactics they use. I'm not saying that these tactics are going to work, but at least to protect yourself, say I have a right to an attorney, I don't want to speak with you, just give them your identity. But when particularly comes into the home, that is your space, that is your privacy. Do not open them door, do not allow them in, do not invite them in to give them more opportunities to do harm. You do not have to open the door. You can ask them for their name, identify, and if there's someone whose legal status and someone who doesn't have legal status, if you open the door, then everybody's at risk. So that's why it's really, really important. In terms of documentations for many individuals that have been in the US less than 2 years, they're potentially at risk if they've come into the United States undocumented or illegally without status. They're potentially at risk under this administration. So who's at risk of being deported? Those who are at risk of being deported are those who have criminal record, potentially, if immigration can get a hold of them. Number two, if somebody has been deported before they haven't left, they're a priority. And then also potentially individuals who have come undocumented through the southern border recently. Also, there's the Lincoln-Riley Act that recently passed in January saying that just a mere arrest, not charge, not conviction, can potentially put someone in detention for removal if they are undocumented. So again, undocumented individual, meaning people who have come in through the border, they don't have green card, they don't have citizenship. So I want to be clear on that. I don't want people to walk away confused, who are we talking about? So individuals who have come in through the southern border, undocumented, should be careful with that. For everybody else, and it's a safe idea too, you don't necessarily have to carry your original documents like your passport, but for example, for those of us who have US passports, you can get a passport card. It's like, I think $85 or something. Maybe carry that to show proof of your US citizenship. Unfortunately, this color of our skin does affect who they are stopping. We've seen U.S. citizens, born U.S. citizens, people of color been stopped and detained and in certain circumstances. Other documents, if you have a lawful permanent resident, maybe carry a copy in your wallet or in your car. If you filed for any type of relief like asylum or any type of relief in immigration court, maybe have the receipt notices and have those with you, or have photos of them on your phone that you could show an officer. But in that instance, I wouldn't want to show them on the phone now that I think about it, because I've been telling people when you show them on your phone, they potentially have access to your phone. So maybe have a copy in your wallet or in your car if you are stopped. So I know we're reaching at the 5:45. There's tons of stuff that we both can talk about. These were the questions that people were asking us in a pre-registration. We want to open up the door, and I'll let Marjan lead us in questions that people are asking, so we can answer the questions that you may have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Spojmie, and thank you, Bismah, for the important information that you all are providing. Bismah, can I start with you, actually? And just before we get to some of the questions in the chat and the Q&A, what are you seeing from CAIR now with this new administration that maybe you hadn't seen before, or like what's changed?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I've been working at CAIR since February, so I can't speak to how much it was before this administration. But we are seeing, in general, a lot of people having a lot of fear of what to expect when they travel internationally. Right now, if you're a US citizen, it's completely understandable to be afraid, but that's a less urgent situation. For the most part, we're not seeing any US citizens being held in secondary inspections for very long. And then for everyone else, occasionally there are people being held for secondary inspection. Right now, we haven't seen anyone held for over an hour and a half. And the questions can seem intrusive, but for the most part, they are released and there is no follow-up, and everyone's home safe, thankfully.
You. Yes, Spojmie, you wanted to
Yeah, I
share?
just wanted to chime in for individuals who are asylum. So if they have gotten their green card based on asylum, particularly for the audiences, if they're Afghan, if they've gotten if they have a green card based on asylum versus the special immigrant visa. Under US immigration laws, a special immigrant visa holder who got their green card can potentially travel outside of the country. I mean, go back to Afghanistan if they want. Anybody, not just Afghans who got green card based on asylum, you got asylum, you sought asylum because you had a fear of returning back to your home country. So your green card does say that your status of the green card based on asylum, you are not allowed to go back to your home country. You can travel anywhere else. So potentially for those individuals who are traveling with a green card, those are concerns. Second of all, for those on the travel ban that I didn't touch on, there's 3 categories: red, yellow, orange. The red countries are strictly restricted. We were supposed to see the travel ban take effect mid-February, mid-March. It didn't go into effect. It's been postponed. So for any green card holders that are on that level of red, orange, yellow, the legal recommendation is do not travel out of the US if you're a green card holder with those potential countries. If you are outside, immediately return, because if the ban takes effect, we don't know what that entails. So I just wanted to mention that's sort of a scenario that we may be seeing with the travel ban possibly taking effect. And for any green card holders, from whether it's the ban country or not, or you have no criminal record, you're clean, just use caution if you're traveling. And then there are different components that play in, whether it's the travel ban, whether it's a criminal record, whether you're a certain profile country, or whether you're on social media because of your posts. Those are the different criteria that could potentially impact a green card holder. Again, I know I'm getting a lot of questions about social media and traveling for green card holders. Use your judgment. And if it's public and they can see it, they could potentially ask you about it. And as we've been discussing, use your judgment on what you want to disclose.
Yeah, I saw that there was multiple questions from green card holders from like European countries and asking if travel and social media. So I think what I'm hearing, Swishme, is just kind of like using precaution, but not the concern is not as great as it is for those who are on those higher risk countries. Is that correct?
Correct. I have many clients from European, either the Canadians from UK or Sweden or other countries or Brazil. I have not, if they have a clean record, meaning they have no criminal record, they have no issues, and their social media is private, we're not seeing as much as that being played out. But if you are very active and you're public and you're going to protest and all that, again, that's your right. That's a decision everybody makes for themselves. But just be prepared for that extra lining of questioning.
And then maybe Bisma, if you maybe you can answer this. And just in general, I think some folks who are U.S. citizens that are saying that they're active on social media, and what concerns should they have, or should they be concerned traveling with being outspoken or open about their political views and activism on social media?
Yeah, if you are questioned during any like secondary inspection at the airport about your social media, that's something to keep in mind and to let CAIR know about. In general, they can't ask you questions, trying to perceive, your race or your religion or your political beliefs. They're only supposed to ask questions relevant to establishing your identity. And if you are afraid that maybe your social media is, maybe you're posting things or liking things that could be considered risky, to remain private, don't accept requests from people you don't know. Just, yeah, again, it's your own risk to assess. For the most part, if your social media is private and you're a US citizen, I wouldn't be too concerned.
Um, And someone also kind of related to that asked about is should they make their social media fully private if they have a USCIS application that's under review? And does the government and or USCIS have the ability to see their private social media? And maybe is that part of the review process?
So they're going to be implementing your social media handlers and in future applications. How that's going to play out, well, I'm not a technology expert. When you make something private, I don't believe they have access to it. But the follow-up question is when you're applying for any type of relief, can they ask you to look at, I mean, right now, someone asks me for my phone at the interview, even as an attorney, I'm like, you don't have a right to my phone. I'm not opening my phone for you. A couple of weeks ago, an officer asked me, can you please make sure your phone is off? I said, yes, my phone is off. And she says, well, I need to see if it's off. And I was like, we're not in kindergarten. I'm not turning my phone. I'm not giving you my phone. And I didn't give her my phone. I said, my phone is off. So in the future, are we going to be seeing where they are going to ask, they're going to ask for your social media handles like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you may be using. How far they're going to go and they're going to be look at it is going to be, First Amendment rights. So at this point, to answer your question, I don't believe they can see the privacy and they cannot ask to go, can I look at your phone, see what's on there? And interviews, and I have not seen that, but they could ask if it's private, if it's public. For example, it was a client who applied for asylum and they asked for certain things that they had taken pictures of already, and they showed him the pictures and said, oh, well, what was the point of this picture? What was the point of this picture? But I'm assuming he wasn't my client. I'm assuming he was public and they got screenshots of that.
And someone had a related and similar to that. I think this is kind of tied to that last point you made about if it is public, then it does sort of become part of public domain. So, they're talking about how they were doxxed on Twitter and uh, the through a Google search, people can find that there was doxing that happened towards them. Um, And so they were just concerned about, their H-1B visa sponsorship, um, because that social media, their social media activism and the backlash from Zionists on Twitter, they're asking now, um, is that a concern for their upcoming visa?
It just depends on how far USCIS is willing to question. It depends on what was on. I mean, doxing, because what was the criteria that they doxed because they were at protests or because they were vocal on social media or certain groups. It could go to potentially USCIS reviewing the applications. We will probably see more of that depending on what's out there in the public domain for that person.
Someone asked if someone is without status, should they be avoiding domestic travel? Um, or even like, a minor traveling with their school on a trip, for folks who don't have legal status, what concerns do they have around travel, even domestically?
That's a very good question. So for everybody, May 7th of this year, the Real ID is going to kick in. So you need your Real ID or you need your green card as your form of ID or your US passport to travel domestically. For individuals who are undocumented and do not have status, so they can get what's the AB licenses in California, but on the right end it says not for federal use. After May 7th, you're not going to be able to use that to travel domestically. We potentially see a high risk of individuals. If TSA is cooperating with DHS or ICE domestically, then that would put you at risk. So unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do domestic travel by plane. If individuals came, like I'd say, on a visitor visa or whatever, and they overstayed their visa and they were using their passport from their home country as a form of ID, they're not going to be able to get a real ID because they don't have legal status. They are potentially at risk because they've overstayed in DHS. So to answer the question, for trips for schools and stuff like that, we're in California. If you are watching from California, our state is providing a lot of protection. You want to check in with the school officials on the protocols of how they're protecting their students and the families. In terms of domestic travel, if you don't have a real ID and you don't have any type of status, it would be highly risky going forward to travel domestically on a plane. Or maybe even on a train. I don't know, but we'll have to see how it plays out.
And tied to that, another person asked if they become if they lose their status while they're in the US, but their immigration sort of process is happening. Um, I guess they're just kind of asking for general advice or what they should do if they're out of status during their stay in the United States.
So they're out of status, but they've applied for some sort of relief?
But your immigration is in process, is what they said.
Yeah, then it's very important to carry. I mentioned earlier, it's very important if you have any type of an application pending. So like 5 clients for asylum or for VAWA, Violence Against Women Act, or U visa victims of crime, or even of an adjustment through a spouse. Say I came in and I overstayed my visa. Now I met someone and they filed a green card for me. It's important to carry those documents to show that you have some sort of relief that you're seeking in whether it's an immigration court or whether it's with USCIS, so that if you are picked up, you have those documentations. And for those individuals, for everybody, you should have important documents and important contact information given to someone you trust or someone reliable, or even an attorney if you have one, so that if you were taken or you were picked up, somebody can locate you and look at your green card or your passport or whatever it may be to easily be able to get you the help that you need. Because just getting those documents once you're detained by itself is very difficult.
And someone was asking, so I know we talked about attorney consultations before international travel. They mentioned um, they're going in for an interview within the US, such as an I-785 removal of conditions on green card interview. And they're asking if these interviews have been changing with the new administration, or is the border more of an issue? So maybe if you can give us a little bit of an idea of what that what those
Oh.
interviews are and what changes we've seen with this new administration.
So the I-751 is what you're referring to. The removal of conditional status is I-751 status. And that's the removal of the 2-year condition. So if you're married to someone less than 2 years, and then you file the I-751 to remove the condition, you get an extension letter that says your status is extended for a certain amount of time. And if you want to do international travel, just make sure you have your passport, the expired conditional green card, and the extension letter. I've had dozens of clients come and go. That's assuming that you have no underlying other issues. So if somebody's got that status and they've got a DUI or they have other issue, and even though they have the extension letter, consult with an attorney. If you were my client, I would say don't travel absolutely under any circumstances. For the interview in and of itself, they're asking for a lot more documentation to prove the bona fides of the marriage and the relationship during that 2-year of the relationship. So at the interview, they're calling those interviews back. Any marriage-based, any I-751, you will be called for an interview, and you have to give detailed documentation within that 2-year timeframe of the marriage to prove the relationship. And so they're asking for a lot more documents. They're asking a lot more questions. So the process hasn't changed. They're getting more detailed in documentations in the relationship.
We had a question about somebody who is, I think through a green card process, but not an asylum, but about to apply for citizenship. Are they better off not applying for citizenship during this time, or apply?
If you meet the underlying qualification, consult with an immigration attorney, make sure you meet all the qualifications, meaning no criminal records, you paid your taxes, you meet the residency requirements. If you meet all those requirements, I would highly recommend, as Bismah said, apply for citizenship, because that process is the last step this administration wants people to do. During his first term, Trump 1.0, they made the test harder. This time around, they're going to make the test harder. They're going to be doing a lot more social media. They're going to be scrutinizing everything. So if you don't have any personal preference of becoming a U.S. citizen and you meet the qualification, absolutely consult with an attorney to file now rather than later.
I know we talked a lot about kind of asserting your rights. Bismah, I don't know if you can kind of tell us a little, any advice you have for people, because I know it can be kind of scary to do when you're in those moments, in those situations. What advice do you have for somebody who, may feel uncomfortable doing so in those moments when they're like, around authorities?
Yeah, I think naturally it's a very intimidating place to be, but you do have rights, and that knowledge should empower you. There are resources out there if you're not comfortable voicing those rights in the moment. There are things called red cards that'll state, the right to remain silent. You have a right to an attorney. You have your right to privacy. So you can find those red cards and print them out, and then just slip those under your door if an agent is at your door. In the moment, the things to remember is to remain calm, invoke those rights, whether you're verbally expressing them or you're getting written resources, not to lie. The agents are allowed to lie to you, but if you lie to them, even if it's just like a simple lie, they can get you in trouble, and they will get you in trouble. And something to keep in mind, I know a lot of people think that like the facial recognition is so much more convenient on their phones, and they don't want to turn it off, and they assume that if they get their phone taken, they'll just turn their face away, and the police won't be able to, or the agents won't be able to unlock their phone. You're not going to be thinking about all those things when you're in that situation. So do turn off facial recognition, keep a passcode. You don't have to share those things. So that would be my advice.
Marjan, I just put the link to the red cards in the chat, so you guys can download those and you can print it out and keep it. It comes in many different languages. Second of all, the question someone asked about having an attorney. Many attorneys are doing contingency fees. I'm contemplating it, but you can talk to attorneys, whether they can be on standby in case you need an attorney. It's like, you know, an ER triage, you know, 24/7. Some attorneys are choosing not to do that. It's just because that means you're locked into that person. But someone asks what they can do. Consult with the immigration attorney. One of the best ways to find an attorney is go to AILA, AILA.com. AILA.com is the American Immigration Lawyers Association. You can find attorneys that are reputable and experienced. That's one way to be able to find an attorney that you can consult with, whether you can pay them on a contingency fee to be available in case something happens. And then that way you're sharing your itinerary and all your information, and you have that security. Not everyone needs it. Not everyone can afford it. But if you do have any issues, please, if you could take anything away, as a green card holder, consult with an immigration attorney to see if it's viable and avoid travel at this time.
Real quickly, Spojmie, you mentioned higher risk countries, and somebody asked, like, what are those higher risk countries? Where can people find that information of like whether their country, what level or status of like risk their country is?
So travel, so let me see, travel ban country list. Sorry, I had a picture of it, but I can't find it right now on list. So draft of, okay, I'm going to find an image. If you want to go ahead and ask another question, I'll put it in the chat box.
Sure. I think we'll start to wrap up with just final advice. So I think Bismah, just for anyone who's traveling right now, or any sort of, what's like your most important kind of recommendations to anyone who's either traveling or just concerned about asserting their rights, or yeah, what advice is like most important for you right now?
Yeah, I think just being aware of what's going on is step number one. And knowing what your citizenship status is, if it's safe to travel, like it's been mentioned, if you're seeking asylum or you have asylum status and you're returning to your home country, that might not be the best idea right now. And you know, if the path to citizenship makes sense for you right now, then I would definitely look into that.
Jen, I put the PDF of the JPEG of the, I don't know if you guys can all see it.
Yeah, I just resent it to everyone, so now they should all have it.
Okay, that's the countries, the red, yellow, orange on hierarchy, and we don't know the details of the travel ban at this point. We're still waiting for the details, but like I said, if you're from one of those countries and you have a green card, please do not travel at this time. And if you are out, please return.
And then oh, thank you. AILA.org is the website, so please
Oh, thank you for correcting that. Sorry, I was multitasking. AILA.org.
yes, AILA.org, so we can put that in the chat. Spojmie Jaffar, is there any final advice or things that you want to emphasize for everyone who's attending today and joining us?
No, I just want to thank everyone for being here. We've been doing this quite often. Thank you, Marjan. Thank you, Bismah, for being here and covering the issues that are impacting our community. Knowledge is key. Please, not everything you see on social media is true. If you're really concerned about something you see on social media that impacts possibly you, please reach out to an immigration attorney. I am located in Pleasanton, California. You can contact me and get a consultation, or you can contact for civil rights issue CAIR, particularly issues arising to students and protests and all of FBI profiling. The last thing I would say is if you are visited by FBI, and Bismah, correct me if I'm wrong, if they're visited by ICE, can they contact CAIR? But I know for FBI visits, they can contact CAIR. So thank you everyone for being here today.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Bismah, sorry, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, yes, if you're contacted by ICE or the FBI, fill out our intake form at the CAIR-SF BA office. And then if it's outside of the San Francisco Bay Area, we have other CAIR offices. So just find whichever one is close to you.
Sorry, Marjan, someone asked about DACA. If you have DACA at this point, there's no decision on DACA. I'm not sure what your question is, but DACA, if you have DACA and you have Real ID, you can still travel, work within the US. Obviously, at DACA, you cannot travel outside of the US unless you have advanced parole, which I wouldn't recommend right now. But DACA is still intact until there's further decisions from this administration.
Thank you all so much for joining today. For those of you who maybe aren't aware, our organization is the Afghan-American Community Organization, or AACO. So you can find our website at aaco.org and look us up and follow us on social media, where you can find more information about these panels that we're going to be doing. We're having another one on Saturday. I think it's going to be a little bit more specifically targeted for the Afghan-American community, but we're going to be touching on just general immigration policies and updates. So anyone can join and hopefully benefit from that. So please go to our website to register and follow us for more updated information, and we'll have more of these as well. So I encourage you all to follow us. But thank you again, Bismah. Thank you to CAIR-SF Bay Area, and Spojmie Nasiri for taking the time today. Spojmie, there was an earthquake in Pleasanton, and you managed to power through that. So thank you again, and thank you to all our guests for joining us today, and wishing you all the best. And we will follow up with an email and share the recording of this for all those who registered and attended, and also place it on our YouTube page as well, so you can watch it there. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.